Spy balloon part of the broader Chinese military surveillance operation, U.S. intel sources say. CNN. U.S. intelligence officials believe that the recently recovered Chinese spy balloon is part of the extensive surveillance program run by the Chinese military, according to multiple American officials familiar with the intelligence. The surveillance program, which includes a number of similar balloons, is in part run out of the small Chinese province of Hainan, officials tell CNN. The U.S. does not know the precise size of the fleet of the Chinese surveillance balloons, but sources tell CNN that the program has conducted at least 24 missions over at least 5 continents in recent years. Roughly half of dozens of those flights happen within U.S. airspace, although not necessarily over U.S. territory, according to one official familiar with the intelligence. And not all of the balloons sighted around the globe have been exactly the same model as the one shot down off the coast of South Carolina on Saturday. That officer and another source familiar with the intelligence said, rather, there are multiple variations, these people said. The link to the broader surveillance program, which was uncovered before the latest balloon was spotted last week, was first reported by the Washington Post. CNN has asked the Chinese embassy in Washington for comment on the suggestion that the balloon that was shot down is part of the wider surveillance program. Meanwhile, at the government lab in Quantico, Virginia, an elite team of FBI engineers is poring over the remnant of the recovered balloon, trying to learn everything it can about the intelligence it may have gathered and how best to track surveillance balloons in the future. Sources familiar with Atwood say that officers want to understand as much as possible about the balloon's technical capabilities, including what kinds of data it could intercept and gather, what satellite it was linked to, and whether it has any vulnerabilities that the US might be able to exploit. And perhaps critically, the investigators will be looking at what digital signatures it emitted to see if they provide a better way for the US to track this kind of balloon in the future. The commander of US Northern Command, General Glenn Banhark, acknowledged to reporters on Monday that the US had a domain awareness gap that had allowed past balloons to cross into US airspace undetected. One source familiar with the FBI operation said the analysis and the reconstruction of the balloon's payload will ideally determine whether the airship was equipped with the ability to transmit data it collected in real time to the Chinese military, or whether the device contained the stored collection that China would later analyze after the device was eventually recovered. China maintains the vessel downed by the US was the weather balloon thrown off the coast, but did offer a rare expression of regret over it in the statement Friday. Beijing's rhetoric hardened significantly after the US military shut down the balloon, with China's foreign ministry accusing the US of overreacting and seriously violating international practice. The defense ministry, meanwhile, expressed a solemn protest, warning China reserves the right to use necessary means to deal with similar situations. Valuable intel gained from balloons transit over U.S. Defense officials say that the U.S. gleaned important clues to the answers of some of these questions while the balloon was transiting the United States. The U.S., using some technical capabilities provided by National Security Agency among other agencies, has already gathered some real-time information on what kinds of signals the balloon was emitting as it traveled, according to one defense officer. I think we will see in the future that the time frame was well worth each value to collect over, Ben Herc said. But officials want to be able to examine the balloon's hardware in order to learn more about its precise capabilities. When the balloon is in our hands, we can look at the technology, we can reveal the supply chain, find out who helped build it, what components were important to it, said the Republican Jim Himes of Connecticut, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Obviously, we can tell its functions. You can tell its functions and the specifications. There is a very high intelligence value in having it. The US will also try to find out more about China's intelligence gathering priorities in the United States. But how much the intelligence community will be able to learn about what information the balloon actually collected or was trying to collect isn't clear at this point, several officials said, and will likely depend on how damaged the balloon's substructures was by the initial shutdown and the 60,000-foot drop into the ocean. The biggest unanswered question officials say remains the China's intent. China continues to argue that the vessel was the weather balloon that drifted off course, and that its pass over the United States was an accident. Officials Officials have acknowledged that this type of balloon has only limited steering capabilities and largely rode the jet stream. But multiple defense officials and other sources briefed on the intelligence say the Chinese explanation is incredible and have described the balloon's path as intentional. The source familiar with the FBI operation also noted the intelligence community will be interested in learning whether the equipment on the Chinese balloon bears any technical resemblance to technology constructed by the US intelligence community and the military, as the Chinese government has long been aggressive in stealing American defense secrets. Elite team analyzing the wreckage. The specialized team from the FBI's Operational Technology Division is analyzing pieces of the wreckage, this person told CNN. This elite team consisted of agent, analysts, engineers, and scientists who were responsible for both creating technical surveillance measures and analyzing those of the U.S. advisories. OTD personnel, for example, construct surveillance devices used by FBI and the intelligence community personnel targeting national security threat. But they also are responsible for managing authorized data collection and worked to defeat effort by foreign intelligence agencies to penetrate the US. The full analysis of the wreckage will take the undermined period of time, the source said, as recovery efforts are still underway. Meanwhile, the defense officials insist that the U.S. learned more about the balloon's capabilities by allowing it to pass over the United States than they would have by shooting it down immediately, a decision that some lawmakers on Capitol Hill have criticized as the counterintelligence threat. But according to one member of the House Intelligence Committee, there's a number of reasons why we wouldn't do that. We want to collect of it. We want to see where it's going and what it's doing. We are not without defenses, this person added. After all, this is the balloon. It's not a stealth bomber. A defense officer said the U.S. has procedures akin to a kind of digital blackout to protect sensitive locations from overhead surveillance, typically used for satellite overflight. CNN's Nectar Gunn and Simon McCarthy contributed reporting.